ready to issue, and we just have.
Do you want to identify yourself?
My name is Tom Jacobs. I'm the architect and agent for the client, Patrick Davis. Yes, this modification was inadvertently allowed to lapse while the project was in the building department, and it's ready to be issued by the building department. So once this is reinstated, we'll go back there and get the building permit issued so that they can get everything legalized.
Okay.
And they've signed the zoning compliance, which disallows the use of it as a residential structure, and there were just minor changes as far as the building permit for some details about high-far construction.
Okay. Now the zoning compliance declaration is only for this building, and it's not for.
It's for the entire, all the accessory structure.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. So although this is technically a new modification, we do see that it is just basically extension of your previous approval, and I make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve the project with the same conditions.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there is a 10-day appeal period, which the member of the public can appeal your project, or also the Planning Commission. They review all the actions of the staff hearing officer, and they also may suspend the approval and call it up and have a public hearing at their board. And that's the same 10-day appeal period.
And once that appeal period is completed, I can get the letter that I need to affix to my plans to show that it's gotten the modification.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 21 Via Alicia. First, we'll hear from Ms. Teeter.
Okay. Project site is located 21 Via Alicia, and it's developed currently with single-family residence, 2874 square feet, with an attached garage. And the applicant is proposing to add a more formal entryway, which is about 27 square feet, and about 14 feet of that will encroach into the front setback. And as you can see, originally when the house was built in, I think, the 1970s, the house 72, the house did comply with the setbacks, but the setbacks were smaller than current setbacks, which are 30 feet. So it actually will encroach less than the existing portion of the house on the westerly side over here. So it's a very minor encroachment. It's actually just, the eaves of the roof will not be increased at all from what I can see from the plans.
Yeah, this is the existing roof line.
Right, so it'll just come out, as I said, very small, 27 square feet. And so for that reason, we support the modification. We think it's a minor encroachment, that it's still maintaining adequate separation between the entryway and the street, and it's really should be no impacts to any of the neighboring properties.
Now, they're also reducing the height, right?
Right. Part of the project is that they will, they're reducing the height to 3.5 feet for the stucco wall and retiling the existing courtyard.
You can see from, I went out and visited the site with this wall here.
Right, exactly.
Oh, we're on point. All right. Do you have anything to add? Actually identify yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lauren Solon. I'm the architect for the project. I think Betsy did a pretty good job of explaining it. As you may notice from the neighboring photos, all the houses on the street were built at about the same time, and they're all well within the current setbacks. Most of the houses are split down the middle. Our project is actually one of the further setbacks versus the neighboring properties, and all of these have bridged driveways. This stucco wall that was in question was built over the top of the framing. It was actually built pretty sloppily at the time, and what we're proposing to do is recreate that wall out over the area where there is a concrete footing, and then just retile the deck, which needs repair, and lower the height. The entry, if you care to flip to the floor plan, currently the front door is right here, and you walk in the front door and immediately, 42 inches behind you is a set of stairs down in the living room, which is cramped and also potentially dangerous. And so what we're proposing is to move under the existing roof line, just move the front door 4 feet forward, and again 14 square feet of that will fall within the setback. But architecturally, the ABR supported it. We think it solves the problem, and there's no impact. So hopefully we can move forward.
Yeah, I went out and visited the site, and like you said, I've noticed in the neighborhood, the majority of the houses are built up close to the street.
Yeah.
And in your situation, generally we don't approve front yard modifications for new living area, but in your instance, it is a minor encroachment. It doesn't extend any further out than the existing main wall of the building. And we feel, it is consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. And therefore, I feel I can make the findings outlined in the staff report. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Never mind. I need to open the public hearing because this is a public hearing. So I need to ask, is there anybody in the audience here to speak on this item? It's 21 Via Alicia. Nope. Hearing no one, I close the public hearing. Okay, now I can do my speech.
You gave them to me. Did you give them to Susan?
I do
Sorry,
have
we're in
them.
a transition period. Betty's the normal staff hearing officer, and I'm training, and I'm going to be taking over. So we kind of have, trying to get all the information.
I have them.
So we are organized. It's just. Okay, so this one, let's.
Always a learning curve.
Separate them.
Okay, hold on. Take this one. Okay, this one's okay. We did receive a letter from Paula Westbury, and it says, "Dear Staff Hearing Officer, already done. Lost a great Buddha that really helped people, helped everybody to survive AIDS and etc. Cancer and blood-related illness is very detrimental. Be well, be well, be well." This was a very, very wonderful place and never should have been torn apart. So I think she's opposed to the project.
What is she talking about?
Would you like a copy? We can give him a copy.
That's okay. I'll make a
Okay.
copy.
Nothing's been torn apart.
Miss Westbury, she's lived in the community a long time, and so sometimes she could be making references, for example, I'm guessing, even to the subdivision of this area.
Oh.
And there may have been prior historic uses in the area that she's recalling.
So
And she monitors...
she's going way back.
Right. She monitors a lot of the city's decision-making and has concerns about how and why we are making changes.
Right.
So that's your copy if you'd like it.
Ms. Reardon, if I can just add, as staff, we look at front yard encroachments very carefully. We've had Planning Commission council direction that they don't really like these, mostly for new square footage. But in a case, one of the things that led us to recommend approval of this is that, we look at the floor plan and what they're proposing, and if there's no real alternative except for wholesale interior remodel, for something small like this, then that to us is a reason to recommend approval. This, again, it's under the existing eaves. It's a very small addition that it just makes for a formal entry, and that's how we got to where we got.
Thank you, Mr. Cotta. Okay, with that, I want to make the findings that are listed in the staff report and approve your project. There is a 10-day appeal period, again, which interested party or neighbor could appeal the decision to the Planning Commission. And again, the Planning Commission has the ability to suspend the action and call the project up for review by theirs. And it's the same 10-day appeal period.
I understand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Whoop-de-doo.
Okay, the next application is 175 Loma Media Road. Ms. Chu, if you'd like to give the staff presentation.
Okay. This is for the project is for an addition in the existing open yard, and it's for about 762 square feet of new floor area. And the discretionary application is to allow the construction within the new yard and to identify one of the front yard areas, because this is located on, it has two front yards. It's on Loma Media, and it has two. The entrance is off Loma Media at the top, but Loma Media also fronts it. It's a very steep lot. So we would like, the applicant is proposing that one of the front yards be identified as the open yard area, and he's actually proposing this front area, which is, as I said, a very steep portion of the lot. So the project received favorable comments from the Single Family Design Board, and the lot size is 13,000 square feet, and as I said, constrained by the steepness of the lot, and there really is no other place, no other feasible location for the new addition. So staff does support the modifications because there really is no alternative for development other than building up. So if you made a site visit out there, you know that this area really is not used as the open yard area. This area, and there's a small patio out here, I think are the areas that the owner uses for their outdoor living area. So for that reason, we do support the request for modifications.
Yes, I was out there at the site yesterday, and I walked around, and I saw that, there was mainly use up here in this area. I do have a question regarding their existing open yard area. Since this is a front yard and this is a front yard, you can't include areas out that way, on either area, because the open yard area can't include the front yard. So if you draw the line parallel to the front lot line over, and then from this corner and kind of curve around, does this meet the minimum dimension? I mean, do they have
the current
do they
open
have,
yard?
Or is it considered non-conforming because it's
a non-conforming open yard as it is.
Okay, so this would be designated as their non-conforming open yard since it meets the locational requirements.
Right.
My understanding is we look first at the location out of the front yard and then the dimensions. Okay.
Dimensions.
So it is non-conforming right now in regards to the open yard. Okay. Did you have any questions?
Just one question or comment. We've been studying open yard modifications because lots such as this that have multiple front yards have needed to seek modifications for things that are readily apparent as an appropriate improvement. So we're looking to amend the municipal code and staff practice so people might not need this type of process. But along those lines, one of the things that the staff has been talking about is the area shown in red, once we have gone through the process and granted a modification, and the basis of that is that you have more than sufficient open yard in terms of area, more than the 1250 in the area noted as red, are we now informing the applicant and taking a position that that area in red would not be allowed to be constructed over without considering that an encroachment into their new non-conforming open yard? If you get what I mean, this is their current non-conforming.
Right,
That would
and that
become
would
their
be
new
new
non-conforming
non-conforming,
open
and
yard.
I would make that same assumption, yes.
Right.
But
Is the applicant, that was my understanding, that once someone is coming in and this difficulty we have of defining open yard given the fact that it can't include front yards on through lots, you're practically all a front yard depending on where you put your building. So,
One
yeah.
additional step, and not
Okay.
Danny's back, as part of the zoning ordinance amendments that you alluded to, we are looking at, in regards to open yard area, when you have a through lot or multiple street frontages, like a corner lot, that you could legally, not so you wouldn't need a mod, provide your open yard area in your secondary front yard, up to 10 feet from your front property
so
line.
this will comply
So this-
completely.
Yeah, so after the zoning ordinance
Okay.
amendments go through, this could be considered your legal open yard area. It would be no longer non-conforming.
Okay.
My
good.
question would be, what would be my question? Well, yeah, okay, so then in yours, so now we're designating this as their open yard area. Once the amendments go forward, he would not necessarily be stuck to this area, would he, as long as he met the other ones? That was Betty's
Yes,
original
that's correct. It
question.
wouldn't be that particular designated area. It could be any place in this secondary front yard that met the
Okay.
1250 and the 20 foot.
This and show just 10 feet from the lower lot line.
Well,
Since you'll probably be processing this through before those ordinances are finally adopted, we're taking this intermediate step, which is to define a new non-conforming open yard. But once the ordinances become effective, then you could be subject to just what the ordinance is.
Yes, that's correct. And,
Okay.
and I have to apologize because we probably didn't do this quite the right way. They don't need a special approval to have this open yard in the front yard. You know, they're asking for a modification to allow an encroachment into their open yard, and really the way that I was looking at it, and I just didn't think of it more when we're looking at the staff report, was the justification for the modification to allow this addition in its location is the fact that there is this whole area. It doesn't happen to count towards open yard in the definitional sense, but it is there, that's what they use, and that's the justification for allowing the modification for open yard.
That is that's the recommendation. It's in there.
Okay, but there is something else that says, you know, getting a modification to allow the open yard to be in the front yard, and it's not really that. We're just saying this is why we are asking for the modification to be approved.
Public hearing.
Oh, I was going to, the applicant hasn't been able to talk yet.
Oh,
Would you like to, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm Greg Rick, agent and architect for the applicant, Greg Tatham. I guess I just have, Danny, a question. So are you saying I should show this area down here? Or you're...
No, leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Well, because at this point in
Because I don't
time,
want to...
That's fine. No, it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay. So, I mean, if 10 years down the road they want to come back and do an addition in this area, this modification isn't going to prevent them from constructing something here if there's area available down here.
assuming the zoning ordinance amendments go forward. If they don't go forward, would still be limited outside of your front yard setback. So we're at this stage right now. The city attorney's office is drafting the actual ordinance language, and we're planning on going back to the ordinance committee with the draft language at the end of June.
Yeah, because I don't want to limit their further potential just because I'm showing some imaginary space here as opposed to lower down the hill.
Mr. Reardon, if the rules change to be a little bit more lenient, you wouldn't be held. You'd be held to whatever's in place at the time. You wouldn't be held by this.
Yeah, so some future architect can show it down here.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
I think we should make the record clear that at the time of this modification being considered, the identification of the alternative open yard is a basis for the approval of the modification, because it is.
Correct.
However, in the event that new standards related to open yards apply, this action would not preclude the application of new zoning standards. Something along those lines to make it very clear to everyone that what our thinking is now, and it is not to preclude you complying with future rules. Yeah.
And the only other thing I want to point out is that I said in the letter, quote, front yard here and the quote, rear yard here is consistent all along the street, that all of the other houses do have the same sort of situation in that vicinity.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak on this item? It's 175 Loma Media. Nope, seeing no one, I close the public hearing. Oh, yes.
I have 2 letters of support too, which I think came with the application.
Okay, again, this one's from Paula Westbury. And she says similar things to the first letter. And here's 2 other ones. One's from Alec Alexander. Expressing support of the project. And James Davis from James and Roberta Davis. Again, saying there'll be improvement to the neighborhood, the support of the project. Okay. Like I said, I went out to the site visit, or out to the site and looked at the site, walked around, and looked at the different areas. If there was another appropriate area for the addition, and to the front of the house, there is lots of trees, oak trees, and that, and so that would prohibit. Or not prohibit, but that would cause impacts to propose the project in the front yard. Towards the rear yard here, it was more steeply sloped and it was more visible from Loma Media. So I agree that if there was an addition on this property, that this would be the most appropriate place. And looking at the trees and such in this area, there is a palm tree, which I noted the SFDB asked you to recycle it. Are you going to sell it or relocate it on the site, or?
They're going to try to relocate it off-site.
Okay, off-site, yeah. So I noticed there wasn't real significant vegetation in that area. So I believe I can make the findings in the staff report in that, with the 2 front yards causing the constraint, and also recognizing, other than our approved, we have gone to the ordinance committee on the amendment to allow the open yard area in the secondary front yard, and we had public hearings for the planning commission, and both bodies were supportive of that. So I believe that I can make the findings and approve the project. And like I said, on the other projects, there is a 10-day appeal period in which a neighboring property owner or an interested party can appeal the decision to the planning commission, and also the planning commission can decide to call it up and review it on their agenda.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the last item, Betty Weiss is going to take over for, and it is 1219 Laguna Street.
We'll begin with a report from Betsy Peter.
Okay. The current site, the site is about approximately 3,500 square feet, and it's located on the corner of Laguna and what I had identified as a private alley, but I was informed is actually a public alley. Current development on the site consists of a single-family residence, and at one time there was a garage located here, but it was removed. The applicant applied for and obtained a permit to remove the garage. It actually was a substandard size garage built prior to current standards for automobiles. So it was misidentified on the plans as a shed. Subsequently, that was discovered, and we are requiring the applicant to replace the existing parking space. Because of the constraints, it's a small lot, it's a very small location. Staff is supporting, the applicant is requesting, the staff is supporting that they be allowed to replace it with an uncovered paved parking space, the same location. So it will, the modification is for the uncovered parking and for the location, which of course is going to be located in the interior setback, but there is no other location for the parking. The other modification is for an as-built fence.
You need to miss the plan. They don't like the fence.
For an as-built fence that was built around the perimeter of the property, and it's about 3 feet 9 inches, a little taller in a few places. It was built along a curb here, and unfortunately, it wasn't measured from the sidewalk from grade as it is required to be, so it's slightly taller than the zoning ordinance requirements of 3.5 feet. So we are supportive of modification because it's very minor in nature. One of the requirements will be that it receives administrative approval for design review, and we have indications that that will be something that will be approved. So we are supportive of both modifications. As I said, we think there is no other feasible location for the parking. So
You have conditions?
we do have conditions.
Okay.
There are several conditions. One is that there's a little design element over the gate on this fence that is required to be removed prior to issuance of building. And
That's shown right here.
exactly.
This? Okay.
Exactly, that needs to be removed. And if there's another photo there, there's another design element, trellis over the car.
This one.
That will be required to be removed. We had our city historian look at this, and he did not believe this could be supported by HLC. So, and as one of the conditions also, the pavement requires administrative approval also.
Anything about the fence corners or something like that?
I don't know if we have resolved this completely yet.
Mr. Cotto?
Yes, transportation looked at that, and they had a site visibility issue. So they, and I thought it was a staff report, there was a requirement that for a distance of 10 feet back from the corner,
Yeah.
the fence be reduced in height to 3.5 feet from the alley, the surface of the alley. Now, I talked to them yesterday, and they are also supportive of an alternate method where instead of reducing it to 3.5 feet, it would be removed and replaced with a fence that goes from a diagonal, 10 feet from one side to 10 feet to the other, and that could remain at the same height as the rest of the fence. I spoke to the applicants about it, and they would like to have the option to go with either one of those two, depending on what works better for them. And staff is supportive of either one of those options.
Okay, so the last statement in the recommendation is that the portions of the fence within 10 feet of the intersection of Laguna and the alley be limited to a height of no greater than 3.5 feet. And that would remain the case. That remains their position, or you're saying,
Or
or the
they would
fence
like
may be relocated.
relocated,
Right.
so it's a diagonal 10 feet, and if it were to be relocated in that way, then it could remain at the same height as the rest of the fence.
Okay.
And actually, that's the diagonal is transportation's preferred alternative. It gives better visibility.
Now, what did you describe? The fence may be relocated 10 feet back?
It's a diagonal that cuts off the corner 10 feet and 10 feet.
It allows for greater visibility there. So.
Okay, and on a diagonal at 10 feet. If they do that, does it need the modification?
It still needs the modification because it's.
At some
That's
point
right. It is
would
hi-
be,
higher
okay.
than
And the rest of it still needs the modification.
Yeah, I understand the rest of it does. I just wasn't sure if that diagonal,
Right, it still would.
because at the points here and here, when it's closer than 10, I suppose.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I understand.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
I have a question too. The fence comes down along this property line too, so it's along a driveway, and they're fine with the height there? That's a question. Are the transportation staff fine with the height of the fence on this site?
They
Well,
didn't-
here it's quite low. I think it's
3.5
in the
feet.
ground. Oh, wait, that's the wrong picture. But I want to just state for the record, I did a site visit of the property in the area.
Yeah, this-
So, right, this doesn't have that curb issue.
Right, plus that's an alleyway, and alleyways are considered side setbacks, so the front yard 3.5-foot setback does not, the 3.5-foot height limit doesn't apply.
Well,
Okay.
along driveways it would, right? It's a long
There
driveway.
still
long
is a
distance of 20
driveway.
feet.
Within 20 feet of a front lot line, actually.
Oh, right, and that refers you back to the front lot line. Okay.
So it does.
So my impression of this fence, as well as the remaining fencing, is that based on the staff report, that there's no modification needed or requested for the height here.
Correct.
Right. This element, does it violate a zoning standard, or is it just
Yeah,
the
it's in
step?
the, it's in the
Okay.
setback, so that does violate the setback, interior
Okay.
setback
Okay.
requirement.
And the condition is that it be removed?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any questions at this time. If the applicant, you'd like to identify yourself and add anything else to the project description or justification for the modifications, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
No. I'm Paul Welterlin. This is Barbara Kellner. We're the owners. I don't really have anything to add. If that's
I understand the project.
Yeah,
That's fine.
okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this time I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak? We have the speaker slip, but you can fill it out after if you'd like to come up. Thank you.
I'm Mike Jones. I'm the neighbor. I've lived next door for 25 years, and I'm just curious as why the city would even entertain granting a modification for this, because if somebody had come in and asked for a permit to demolish the garage that was there, you would say, no, that's our rule. You don't tear down a garage that's non-conforming and then go ask for a permit for it. So I'm wondering why you're even why wasn't the requirement just to rebuild the garage? The findings in your report say that there's a physical hardship, but the space is there to build a garage back. It would be, there's 9 feet 10 inches from the face of the house to the property line. So you could almost get what's required now, garage in there. Requiring him to put just the open space in there, it's still the same parking space. The fact it doesn't have a roof on it doesn't make it a hardship. I probably haven't said that right, but it's the same space, so it could just as easily be a garage. All he's got to do is put a roof on it. So I'm only concerned about that from a big picture as to why the city is even entertaining the modification, because if he had asked for it before, you would have said no. But now that he's done it without the permit, you're entertaining the mod. So the problem that happens when you don't have any covered parking is you don't have any storage. And this is a small house. I've been in this house many times over the years. There's limited storage inside. And so what happens is when they rent the building out to tenants, they start storing stuff outside, and there's no place to store it outside. So it seems like it could in the future be area used as storage instead of parking. If they do use that area for storage, bikes or what have you, then there won't be any parking space, and then they'll be parking in the alley, which is one of our bigger concerns of the neighbors that live along the alley. My biggest concern, though, is that the city is going to give him credit for having a single-family residence that has only one uncovered space. And then in 2 years or 5 years, he comes back to the city and he says, hey, I want to rebuild a house, and I only need to provide, well, no covered parking, because I got a modification. So if you're going to grant the modification, it should be for the specific project that's here before us. And if a project comes in a couple of years and he wants to rebuild a house or put an addition on, then he should be required to bring the parking up to the current standards at the time. The staff report refers to the alley as private. It's in the very first line of the staff report.
That correction was made.
Okay. And that gets to be an issue. It was a major issue when I rebuilt my house, and I had to get a bunch of modifications, and one of the things I had to do was move my trash out of the alley. It could not be visible from the alley. It couldn't be in a enclosure along the alley. So it seems like they should be held to the same standard. And another thing we're doing here, as you know, Dennis Allen has a project at the end of the alley. They're building new condos.
Right.
All of the neighbors that have lived there over the years, the owners, I'm the only actual tenant or resident that lives there, but Dennis is going to live there, and the other property owners have all discussed improving the alley. And we're going to actually be going to City Council with a program to repave the alley, improve the drainage, and underground the utilities. There's 2 poles there. Dennis Allen, at the end of the alley, has to remove a pole. And I've been wanting to remove my power pole since I lived there. Now that Dennis has come on board, and because there's a new neighbor right across the alley, there's it looks like it's going to happen now. We've hired a consultant that's helping us get the utilities undergrounded. And all that we would like to see them do is, as part of this project, before they pave their driveway.
I want to make sure it's where people can see it. So if you need to point with your finger or this, up to you.
There's a power pole right here. And if these utilities aren't underground before they do their driveway, then they're never going to get underground, or it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to remove the pole. So that we're asking, and he's already put in an electric meter, and he's got conduits about 90% of the way there. So, now, the reality of it is, I kind of not like the garage there.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't like the way it was gone about doing it.
I understand.
And I think the fact that he knew he shouldn't have taken the garage down, he took the garage down, and he comes back to you after the fact and asks for a modification, seems like it opens the door to putting some conditions on it. And I think those conditions are the ones that and I'll just reiterate them and I'll be done.
Okay.
One of those is I think he should be required to underground his utilities and waive his right to protest the formation of an underground utility district. That's a standard condition that is placed on every project that gets discretionary review.
Keep going. Thank you.
He should relocate his trash somewhere in his backyard. It used to be picked up from Laguna Street, but now it's picked up from the alley. So he did try to enclose it with a little fence, but it's still visible from the alley. And I want to make sure that if you're going to grant the modification, that the parking area be used for parking, not for a patio or storage. And that the modification be for this project only, not a future rebuilding of the house. And then all of the neighbors have agreed to share in the cost of repaving the alley and the improvements that are going on. And it would be nice if they also participated, since they have frontage along the alley.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
I'll
seeing...
take this back.
Can I just borrow it just in case we need it during the discussion? Give it back to you at the end, thanks. Seeing no one else here, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, Mr. Goins raised a number of issues, and I'll be sure that everyone has the proper opportunity to respond. So, a couple of things. I'll go through and ask the questions that as I feel I need them answered, and then give everyone an opportunity to fill in if there's anything our concern is missing. Okay, the first comment I'd like to hear from Mr. Cato is the point that Mr. Goins made about a property owner's ability to make a request for a modification, and his concern that the way this was gone about, that we would not have allowed the demolition of the garage. So that one procedural issue, if you could address that.
Ms. Weiss, we don't actually like the way this happened either. You know, I was involved with the sign-off of this permit for the demo. It came to me as the demolition of a shed. We, as staff, were under the impression that there was a shed and a garage. And if you look at our plan check corrections, there's something in there that says, okay, we're letting you take care of this, but you have to still take care of your garage issue, because there was a garage issue noted in the zoning information report. So we were under the impression that the garage and the shed were two different things. So we issued the building permit once, and we thought it was an unpermitted shed as well. So there was no reason to make it go to the Historic Landmarks Commission, because they were just getting rid of an illegal shed from what I thought we were doing.
Do you have the plans that show that?
You know, we couldn't locate the original plans. That was, I had archives try and pull the plans, and we weren't able to find them.
I didn't think to look for the most recent plan, but in any case, so then once the demolition started, I got an email from Mr. Goins, and we started looking into it, and we found out that that was the garage, and so I can't remember exactly how it worked out, but they either came in or we contacted them because they wanted to now pave the area, and we said, whoa, that was supposed to be the garage. You don't have your garage anymore. It's an issue. You know, we have to do something about this. And then we started looking into the specifics of the case. We were told it was 9 feet wide. You know, if you put a garage with the walls and things, then you get a space that's probably 9 feet, 8.5 feet wide, which is way substandard. I mean, 10.5 feet wide is the normal standard, and if you add 6 inches on each side, you need about 11.5 feet of width to get a garage in there. And so, looking at the specifics of the case, I would have thought we thought that probably if they had come to us, there would have been some more process, but we would have probably supported them on, because you couldn't get a car in there right now anyway, and we didn't think you could really get a car in afterwards if it was a garage. So that's how we got here. So it's not that all the time we wouldn't do it. Most of the time, Mr. Goins is correct. We would not support covered parking being demolished, but we have done it in the past if there's extenuating circumstances, and I think that there are in this case.
Yeah, on that point, my understanding is, based on numerous properties that I've reviewed in the city, there are many with non-conforming garages where property owners come to us and say, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I had one here where they said, we don't park in this garage. It's not large enough. The 1945 construction doesn't work for us, and we need to enlarge our garage, and they were asking for modifications to make the garage size sufficient to actually use as a garage. And what tends to happen is those structures become storage sheds, and people aren't parking in them. So I think that my understanding, Mr. Goins had made a statement, is why is the mod being considered? There's enough space almost, was what he said, to build a garage. And my understanding is that there is enough space, maybe not, almost, maybe not. If this distance is 9.5 feet, you said the minimum dimension is 10?
10.5.
10.5. And even the way, what I see there now, personally, I have a concern about the fence as an obstruction to using this area for parking, and I'll bring that up as I'm deliberating. I'm not sure that there's enough room for, I feel pretty confident from my point of view that there is not enough room for a full structure garage there, and that, I thought I saw a picture that car semi-parked, yeah. This is a small car, and it's at an angle. It's not shown being parked in there, but so I didn't experiment with my own car, which I probably should have. I have a 4Runner, and just seeing if I was a little hesitant with this crossbar, but the staff report had said that was going to be removed. So I want to be looking at this as appropriate replacement parking, and I don't think that there's enough room for a garage there. Okay, the next question I have for staff is, are you familiar with the condition that Mr. Goins referred to as to waiving the protesting of participating in an undergrounding district? Are you familiar with that condition at all?
I am familiar with that condition, but that is a condition that we've put on bigger projects. We've never put that sort of condition on a modification. Mr. Goins did ask me about that. He asked for the staff to put that as a condition. I didn't think it was appropriate. I didn't think that the city had the nexus on a project this small. That is something that we do for condos and for much bigger development.
Okay. I also recall that on that condition at the Planning Commission that it has been more on subdivisions where there is a basis under the Subdivision Map Act to be looking at issues such as utility connections. And I too have found that hasn't been applied on smaller projects. Okay, I have a question for the applicant. If you could explain how your trash has been handled. Mr. Goins made a comment about that it might have been located in a different location. I'm curious where the trash people park and where they roll out your neighbors' trash cans and where it was located, if it has been any other time, and where you're proposing. I just want to understand how that works for you.
The trash does come down the alley to make up the truck stop, drives down the alley, and as far as I know, they pick up from the different locations here. There's also a dumpster at the end of the alley that I think belongs to maybe the church. Since we took it over, the trash cans were in this general area, so I don't know where else they would have been other than that. And we had just proposed to make a nice enclosure for the trash cans. There was a temporary out there on the site. If you saw it now, we've got some temporary lattice barriers, but there isn't really any other place for it.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious.
Behind here will be kind of closed so that trash people won't be able to get back there.
Right, they would be able to get
and
by
if we
a
parked in
car.
this, then a car would never be able to.
I had noticed in your letter, this will also provide a clean trash area near the street.
Right.
And the staff was recommending that there be design review for the paving. I think it would be appropriate to ensure that we have design review of the trash enclosure.
Is that a requirement to build a trash enclosure?
Well, we'll see how it goes. I think that that's a concern as well, and I saw the temporary situation, and I do think that
was to give us an idea visually of what it might look like.
Because the property is located in El Pueblo Viejo, which is a special design district in the city, any exterior alteration to the property is subject to review, and it really is any exterior alteration. So that certainly includes all the fencing. And it would include design review of a trash enclosure if one is proposed or required.
Well, we haven't proposed.
I know, or required. Right. The levels of design review, I just wanted to mention, Ms. Teeter, in your staff report you had said you understood that the design review might be at the administrative level. The staff report was written generically as stating design review. So under my consideration of the action today, I may define design review more specifically or not. My understanding from staff is you're anticipating that would be an administrative level.
We are anticipating that, but you certainly can condition it for another level if you think it needs consent.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Is there anyone else in the alley that has their trash?
I don't believe so.
I'm going to go through the issues, and again, I'll turn it over to both the staff and the applicant to fill in any area that you feel I have missed, or you want just your own opportunity to make your statements. Okay. I had actually seen an earlier communication from Mr. Goins and understood some of the things that he might be asking today as well. So I wanted to go through and hear from the staff on the issues of that the area would be used for parking and not storage. Did I say that wrong? Okay. The problem with no covered parking was concern about storage. I actually find that the problem with covered parking is storage. Often what happens is that when people have garages, they fill them up with storage and you can't see it. We have that much more as a concern than parking, uncovered parking being used for storage. But I think I saw some information where I'd like to hear from the staff what the zoning ordinance standards are and whether or not any discretionary conditions are really necessary from your point of view regarding the use of the parking area.
The zoning ordinance already requires that parking areas be kept available for the parking of vehicles, and it's a violation of the zoning ordinance not to do that. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think it was necessary to put a special condition on here because that's a situation that's already covered. If we get a complaint about it, we would investigate and we would take enforcement action.
Okay. Another zoning issue would be, and that's the nature of their modification request, is to allow parking in the interior yard.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's part of what's being requested.
This area, and I showed you a picture earlier where there was a car parked in there. Mm-hmm. Would parking a car in this area constitute a zoning violation?
Yes, that would be parking in the interior yard, right, at a side setback.
Okay. So I think that this action should make it clear as to where parking is allowed and where parking isn't allowed.
I'm sorry, that it would just be allowed here?
In that location. Right. That's correct. Yeah. And once you build a trash enclosure, make it more. Yes, Ms. Ryn?
Led to a question that I had regarding the amount of paving they're proposing. Are you proposing the paving to come all the way over to the tree and then to the fence?
Correct.
And the reason being, why do you feel you need the paving all the way over?
Well, we don't have mud to get to the trash.
Right,
versus landscape.
we would be going to the gate here, right, and we want to keep the trash clean, not on dirt, just to make it a clean area.
They were proposing pavers.
It's not a very big area.
Yeah. Right. Which I think would be good to let the water.
They drain very well.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes it, because it'll be dark out here, to get out of the cars, to have as little obstruction to get to the gate as possible.
Yeah.
Ms. Reese, we had, I know that we had talked to the applicant about this before, and I had suggested perhaps like a little raised curb. They could do something with those pavers to make it a little higher along the edge, so you couldn't like diagonally park in.
We had kind of gone into that, and also with the paving company, and they had strongly recommended against that, just as a trip and fall danger, because it will be dark, and you get right out of your car, and you won't be able to see the curb. And
I'm concerned about the trip and fall, but again, as I mentioned earlier, all exterior alterations, so the staff was mentioning the paving and all those things, we're not really being presented a detailed plan for here today. And so there will be a need for a follow-up plan review for the design review elements as well as the building permit, because this plan doesn't, it says pave area.
Yes.
Okay, it does say remove trellis. Good, so that's good. I guess keep the tree.
The tree, yes, we keep the tree.
So what are the lines around the tree?
Well, the current fence line goes here, and then the paving would go on this side of the tree.
I see. So that's the edge of the pavement?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to give the tree an enclosure.
So right there. That's what you're saying. What's that little rectangle? a planter box. Is it there now?
It's not pictured there. It is there now on the site. If you saw it the last couple of days, just for visual. It's a, you know.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed it, so it's somewhere in this area here now. That's what's shown on the plan.
Yeah, it's right where it's
Something.
shown on the plan.
Yeah.
This whole area here would be paved, and that little
Correct.
box is just going to sit on top of it. It's like a planter box you put on your front porch.
Okay. Okay.
Now, those, I'll just mention that those concerns were, there was some talk of they did not want me to have area for 2 parking spots in front. So
Right. That was what I was getting to as well.
that's why that's why the planter box is here and the
Oh, I
paths are
see.
being
Right.
closed.
That would be another way to get to that.
Right. So it's very clear that there's not going to be any
Okay.
more parking there.
All right. Before I go on into other questions that I have, Ms. Reardon, did you have any others for staff or the applicant? Okay.
No, you've touched
All
on
right. Staff, did you have any additional comments you wanted to make?
No.
Okay. And then to the applicants, did you want to summarize or respond to anything that you've heard so far?
Just a general question. I heard you mention something about additional plans being required or additional.
Well, my understanding is that the conditions of approval is recommended, and depending on the outcome of this action, it's likely that you'll need to present a plan for design review approval. And depending on what additional features, such as what if I felt it was necessary to require a trash enclosure, you would prepare a plan or make that change to this plan and submit it to design review. That's just the normal course of the procedure. Because improvements on this property before you get your building permit must have a Historic Landmarks Commission approval, either commission, consent, or administrative. There will be another plan, and it may be altered or with additional details or different information, or it may be the same plan that's submitted. So, yeah.
And how long does that take?
The design review process, the HLC meets every other week on the off Wednesday. We're here today on Wednesday. They're here next Wednesday, same time. And the consent review happens every other week, and the administrative review happens throughout the week.
Because, Jose Limon had.
Jaime?
Jaime.
That's okay. No problem.
Had indicated that this would be administratively approvable.
Okay.
He's seen the fences, he's seen the
Okay, I
pictures, he's
understand.
seen the stones.
So if
Yeah.
it goes the administrative route, that could happen in a matter of days. It's not on a particular agenda, but the regular agenda is every other week. Okay.
Any
Did you have
other-
any comments about, well, I haven't responded to all these yet.
Yeah.
But if you have any comments about working with your neighbors on the undergrounding, that sounded like really important information to you to consider. Many neighborhoods in the city would love to have their utilities underground, and some people go to great lengths and expense. What Mr. Goins is suggesting that you talk with the neighbors about is, I don't know if you've planned anything in this area. It would be subject to paving and all of that, so I thought that was a good question.
Well,
Well,
one
for-
thing,
here.
let me say,
Go
one
ahead.
thing I have to say is, as a neighbor, I would love it if Mr. Goins would talk to us.
Okay.
Rather than have to present it before a committee. He's never come to talk to us directly
Okay.
as neighbors. So I would really appreciate that and welcome that tremendously, because it would be nice to be neighborly. So I would really, certainly be happy to work with the neighborhood, what's best for the neighborhood, and I would really appreciate some communication, not before a committee.
I can appreciate that. Yeah.
And interestingly enough, and oddly enough, we had planned to put the power lines underground, and the electric company had asked us to come to Mr. Goins' side of the power pole with the lines. We had dug the trench, we had laid the conduit, and it came down to that we would need to go over a 10-inch section of Mr. Goins' corner property, and he instructed us to stop working and that we were not allowed to cross his property with our power lines. So we did make that effort.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Yep, excuse me. Please have a seat.
So we-
let me
yeah.
just make a comment here. I agree with the statement that you made. I think that this is completely the wrong forum for this discussion. Mr. Goins was free to make the comments that he wanted to make. I wanted to allow you to make a few comments, but I'm not going to hold a discussion here today about the undergrounding. Mr. Goins, we didn't interrupt your statements. I would like the applicants to make a few statements, and I can tell you right now that this won't be debated or solved here today, the issue of the undergrounding at all. Because I really don't think that a fence around a property line at approximately 3.5 feet or the replacement of a non-conforming garage to a paved parking area warrants the city issuing discretionary conditions on undergrounding. I feel very confident in my position on that. However, I also feel that this is a great opportunity, and I think what your neighbors are looking at doing regarding undergrounding is, I want to encourage you to get on board, find out what you can do. If you've had any trouble in the past,
the conduit is in.
Yeah, perhaps there's a new way forward and you won't have trouble in the future. I think it would be a really great thing to explore. And that is essentially what I heard Mr. Goins say, is this is a good opportune time. Neighbors are interested in both undergrounding and improving the alley. And I think you could be an important part of that. Of course. Yeah. But anyway, back to you. Was there an electrical permit? What were you doing?
We had to upgrade the electric panel and the electric, which we pulled a permit and located a new panel at this location.
Yeah, I think I saw that in the picture too.
It could be there. And we did trench, and we, according to the instructions of the power company, trenched and conduited. We have the conduit to our property line now. But we had to run overhead because we couldn't get to the pole.
Yes, I can see your utility box here.
That's probably the old one, right? Is that the new one? I can't see. Oh, that's the new one.
Yeah, okay. All right, so...
so the power's been upgraded.
Okay. I do think that I know that there are different standards in the city's review process where undergrounding is required. And you are, from a code standpoint, not crossing that threshold. So it wouldn't be required by code. Then the question is the nature of the discretionary requests being made such that there's a nexus or a reasonable rationale to require certain conditions? Okay, so it's important that this is a discretionary decision, which in my case, from my discretionary judgment point of view, as I just mentioned, the fencing, I don't think, and the uncovered parking is a link to the undergrounding. Next is the question, is there a link between that and the paving of the alley? Again, under the municipal code, there's a threshold where it's non-discretionary. A condition is to be applied when a certain improvement is being made. Property owners are required to improve their frontage. And again, a fence and a demolition of an old garage does not, to my knowledge, trigger the valuation and why the Public Works Department would require the paving. But I am not certain of that. And the way in which the project went about with demolishing a shed and not clear that it was a garage and not clear that there was replacement parking going in, I just wanted to advise you and the staff that I think first there should be a determination made as to whether or not the city's municipal code would require any paving improvement or public frontage improvement for the building permit that you are now that everyone will understand that it's for demolishing a garage and new paved parking. I still think that it'll probably be below the threshold, but that's not my decision to make, and it's a code standard. So I'm just telling you that.
You're talking about improving
if you
the
read
alleyway?
Municipal Code, Chapter 22, I'm not making this up. You can follow it. Municipal Code, Chapter 22, you're zoned R3, and it calls out those zones specifically that when a building permit is sought for a certain type of improvement, and that's where I can't explain it to you all, but that a property owner may be required to improve. Usually it's like a half frontage or paved. If there's a damaged sidewalk, there could be a variety of things. In your case, your alley frontage is in poor repair. And again, I know of, because I think I approved this condominium down the street. And I know they were required both under the Municipal Code and the Subdivision Map Act for a condo, which is a much more significant project. They were required to do something. It sounds to me, what I'm saying is, one, we need to check if you're required to do anything, okay, under the codes. And then secondly, if you're not required to do anything, this is once again, I don't know that these other people in your neighborhood are required, but they have an interest in improving their alley. So again, I think that would be great if you talked with your neighbors. But first you should find out what you're required to do. Because you may be required to do a certain amount and be willing to do more with the team. So it's Chapter 2222. But it's Public Works that applies it, and I'm not in a position to tell you what the city engineer, what his standards are. Okay, so that's the paving, is that, again, for this type of improvement, you may even be under the code, below the code radar, and I'm not inclined to condition paving of a public alley for a fence or an uncovered parking space. Okay. The area where I do feel that the discretion overlaps into the nature of what you're doing is in the design review, and fences and trash enclosures and those small accessory type of structures, I think, are related. And I do know that in the design review process and any modification, you are seeking a discretionary zoning modification, that the Planning Commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission treat every project with a lot of consideration, and that the desire to improve the aesthetics of the area and not have trash visible from the street is a standard that is often upheld. Not in every case. You drive around town, you'll see trash in many locations. Not every project has requested a discretionary action such as the modification that you're requesting. So I do feel that your modification request for the slight increase here, I'm a little surprised at transportation, but I think that's good. It is an important corner, and there's vegetation, and they're just being cautious. So I'll go with the transportation recommendation here. I think this minor height here is supportable under the modification. And as you come around here and we get into parking in the interior yard, I concur with the staff recommendations for removal, and you do too because you're proposing it now, so that's fine. But I would condition the project to have a trash enclosure screening the trash containers. It could be in the same location you're proposing, but be subject to design review and shown on your plan that receives the permit. So that's what I was saying, you would need to revise the plan.
Yeah. And this, you don't think that that would be sufficient, that I need to have a detail of the trash enclosure?
Yes.
Or a picture?
Yeah. You would, yeah, the trellis painted white to match, notes to that effect.
Okay.
With a gate, a latch and things like that, so we know it's functional and we know how large it is and that it fits there and that kind of detail.
Now, it is beyond the setback. Does that make any difference?
It's visible,
It's
to
visible.
the street.
From the alley?
Yeah, right, from the public alley.
Is the regulation visible from the street or visible
It's
from
not a regulation, it's a discristionary, more of a design review.
Well, it's our intention to make something nice.
Exactly.
Anyway.
So we're
That's
just
what
we're flowing together
we'd
on
like to
that.
get it moving so we
Okay.
can do it. But
Okay. Then, now, back to a question for staff. In your site visits or study of the plan, do you have any concern about the width of the area and any of this fencing in terms of making the parking area less functional?
Ms. Weiss, I don't think it's ideal, but it's better than a building. If it's 9 feet 10, basically uncovered parking space is usually about 8.5 feet to 9 feet wide, and this would be 9 feet 10. The 9 feet wide does give. It's not great in terms of having both doors open at once, but it does work. I don't have a concern that it wouldn't be used for parking because it's on the narrow side. If that's what you're asking.
The here, two different photos. One shows that side, and then this shows the other side. Is that the only car you have? The small car? Have you ever parked a larger car in here?
You've parked a larger, like a station wagon. Yeah. Well, the other restriction is it's also not that deep. It's not 25 feet deep. It's only
because of this, right?
Right. It's only 19 feet. Is that 17 or 19?
It says 17.
17 feet. Right. They parked a van in there. Yeah.
Okay. Since the fence was there.
Since the fence was there.
Okay.
Because just to refresh we're as close to the property line here as we can get. We came back with our posts 2 inches from the property line and put the fence as close as we can. And this is a single wall house. There's just no, we would love to have a garage that was 10.5 feet wide, but we don't have any.
Yeah, I see there's a constraint there. Okay. Trash covered. Oh, okay. Yes, I was interested in this concept too. I'd like to talk it out a little bit on these modifications. If a modification is granted to allow an uncovered parking space, how does that carry over into any future projects? What is the staff opinion on how that works?
We've said that the modification runs with the land. If it was it is, okay, first of all, it's non-conforming as to the number of spaces required right now because there's only 1 instead of 2 required, and it's non-conforming because, it's supposed to have covered parking and it doesn't, right? So we would still, no matter what happened here today, we would still consider it non-conforming as to the number of spaces. So if the applicants or any future property owner were to apply for more than a 50% addition, they would have to bring their parking all the way up to code, which means 2 covered parking spaces. If they came in with less than a 50% addition, we would treat it as if it were non-conforming and not required to be brought up to code.
Okay, and that, I think, is a condition when you're non-conforming.
Correct.
But this really is not just a non-conforming determination. This is the granting of a modification.
Correct.
So there is discretion to make clear for the record that this could hold for an existing situation,
right.
I think.
And I agree with that condition because if they were to,
we'll explain to you in just a second.
We'll
interpret what our conversation is.
It's a pretty small house, but if it were to, if it were to increase, we want this to go with, these modifications to go with this particular, the way it's laid out right now.
I feel that way too, because if someone wanted to look at the site and reconfigure, there's not a lot of room for reconfiguring.
No,
you come in an as-is condition with an as-is solution, and I think that it's a reasonable solution. The concern is, if it was a new proposal, it should be a new day to look at how the parking is handled. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If we were proposing, for example, a 2-story house or something, and if there was a garage on the ground level that accommodated 2 cars or something, that would be
right. If there was a remodel here, it would be, well, why should you be adding to your home and you just get to maintain the special benefit that was really done with no other changes to the main structure? Right. I think that makes sense. And I think that what Mr. Kato was explaining is that and I think Mr. Goins is concerned, the city has taken the position in some instances that you can keep your status quo non-conforming and add up to 50%. But that was when you just kept it just as is, and this has been a little bit different than that. So I think it's been better, to tell you the truth, because I didn't see the shed, but or garage, but I have a good feeling that it really wasn't functional, and this offers a better alternative. So I understand your intent behind it, and I think it is an improvement to the property. Okay. Why consider hardship almost big enough? No storage, that's a zoning violation. Okay, no parking in the alley also. You're there with all your neighbors. I'm sure that's a great concern, and the city's posted the sign, no parking in the alley. And I don't have any reason to hold you to a different standard than the rest of the community on that. What about the future? We talked about that. Trash, we've talked about that. Okay, Mr. Reardon, do you have any additional comments? We're sharing these responsibilities these days.
I had a list of items that you've covered, so.
Okay, all right. Does anyone else feel that we've missed anything of importance to discuss?
Ms. Weiss, I did look up Chapter 2244,
okay.
which is the street dedication improvements.
Okay.
And it does apply to the R3 zone.
Yes.
And it does require a certain amount of dedication or improvements, but there are exceptions. And the one that seems like it's pertinent to here is says it shall not apply to additions and accessory buildings incidental to a residential building legally existing on the lot, provided no additional dwelling units or guest rooms are created. So it doesn't, it wouldn't apply. It seems like it's clearly exempted or accepted.
So the Public Works Department, on your prior building permit, because you did obtain a building permit to demolish, didn't require paving. And when you come back in, because you'll be getting a revised permit to show all of these improvements now, sounds like Mr. Cato's opinion is that they won't require it again.
Okay.
That's still up to the Public Works Department to make that determination, but it seems that they wouldn't. I did, again, see some correspondence between the parties the last couple of days, and Mr. Cato, you did encourage that you all talk with your neighbors, and I think that would just really be great.
We would be happy to.
Okay.
We haven't been invited to be in any discussion.
How long have you been here? I'm just curious.
Since July of last year.
Oh, okay. All right. So to the matter at hand, Mike, you can have your plan back. Thank you. Oh, we did receive a letter from Paula Westbury, too. Thank you. I'm not sure if she's in favor or opposed. Okay. Okay. The modification to allow a fence along the front property line in excess of 3.5 feet can make the findings as recommended in the staff report that the where's the one on this? It's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance to secure an appropriate improvement because the fence, if measured from the curb, would comply with the zoning. And the fence post being slightly higher than the fence is a reasonable improvement as well. But that approval is subject to the following conditions: that the arch constructed over the gate be removed, as shown on the plan, and that the fence within 10 feet of the intersection of Laguna and the alley be reduced to 3.5 feet, or that the fence may be relocated at its current height on a diagonal 10 feet back. So that includes all of the fencing that is over 3.5 feet, that modification. Oh, and subject to design review. Okay. Secondly, the modification to allow an uncovered parking space instead of a covered parking space, and to allow the parking space to be located within the interior yard setback. I'm approving that modification, making the findings as recommended in the staff report that the modification is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, because there are no feasible alternative locations outside of the setback. Further, because of the size constraints of the parking area, a covered parking space would not be able to accommodate a standard car. With the condition that the trellis, as shown on the plan, be removed, and that the applicant incorporate a trash enclosure for the trash area to screen it from view from the public alley, and that the paving of this area also is subject to design review. The paving and the trash be subject to design review. Further, that the improvements shown on the plan, the trash and the planter, are to be positioned to preclude parking in this area as well. Parking's permitted in the drive area as shown on the plan. Okay. And that the condition of the parking modification of parking in the front yard is also that this modification and site improvement is limited and tied to the existing improvements shown on the plan. In the event that a future improvement or change to the dwelling is proposed, that the modification would need to be reconsidered. And it only goes with this particular proposal. I'm not going to say what they can do with it in the future, but it just would need to be reconsidered.
Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Could I ask for a slight modification,
Change?
revision to that
Yeah.
language to say that any additions, I mean, the thing that would trigger would be additions if they want to
right.
do some.
What did I say?
You
Changes?
said any alterations.
Yeah, because what if you upgrade the kitchen? That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
Any additions to the residence? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Okay, this decision is being granted today as an approval subject to the conditions as I explained them. Did you understand them?
So what do we need to do to get our driveway paved now?
Okay, hold on one second. I just wanted to, do you understand the action that I took? Okay, so secondly, I'll just let you know that all actions made by the staff hearing officer are appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission also has a liaison oversight, where if the project is raising concerns that the commissioners feel that a full commission review is necessary, that's independent from the appeal. That's the same 10-day appeal, same 10-day period.
During the same.
Yes, right. So this approval action would stand for 10 days unless appealed, and then we would have a different hearing at the Planning Commission. During this 10-day period, or however much longer from there it takes you to do, you would work with Danny and his staff. You would make a submittal of a plan for design review. The standard, as I understand it, is you submit a plan and the paperwork as if you were going to consent, because we still want the basic pieces. And Mr. Limon considers whether or not he puts it on consent or he looks at it himself. Okay? And I'm just saying design review, so I'm leaving that up to Mr. Limon still to decide. Then once you have the design review, then you submit to the Building and Safety Division for your plan. Right. Those are the sequences of steps. Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and good luck improving your neighborhood. Thanks.
That's exactly right.
Okay. I'll keep this one. All right. So with that, we are adjourned, and I've got to run to council, so I'm not going to hang out.